Macaulay Culkin was born on August 26, 1980 in New York City, but this isn't one of those heartwarming discovered at a diner stores. Macaulay was manufactured for stardom, and his father, Kit Culkin, was the architect. Kit was a former stage actor who never made it big. He had 7 children who would become his second chance. The Culkin apartment on Manhattan's Upper West Side was cramped, chaotic, and run like a military operation. Kit would drill his kids on their lines, drag them to auditions, and demand sheer perfection. Macaulay started acting at just 4 years old. Not because he'd asked to or shown an interest, but because that's what the Culkin children did. By age 8, he'd already appeared in several off-Broadway productions and small film roles. He was good, naturally good, with timing that seemed impossible for someone so young. And then in 1989, that changed everything. Director John Hughes was casting for a new film, Uncle Buck, a comedy about an irresponsible uncle forced to babysit his nephew and nieces. He needed a kid who could wisecrack and go toe-to-toe with John Candy. At the audition, 8-year-old Macaulay delivered his lines with such perfect comedy timing that Hughes knew immediately he'd found himself something extremely special. The scene where Macaulay interrogates his Uncle Buck through the mail slot became iconic. This wasn't just a cute kid playing dress-up. This was a performer who understood comedy at a cellular level. Uncle Buck was a raging success, making over 80 million. But more importantly, John Hughes now knew he'd found his star for a script he'd written in just 9 days. That script was called Home Alone. When Home Alone hit theatres in November 1990, nobody expected what happened next. It wasn't just a success, it became a cultural atom bomb that people still watch today. The film made $476 million worldwide, becoming the highest grossing live-action comedy of all time. Macaulay Culkin, at 10 years old, became the most recognisable child on earth. His hands-on face scream became one of the most parodied images in cinema history. The offers poured in. Kit Culkin, now his son's manager, negotiated like a mob boss. My Girl in 1991 showed Macaulay could do drama, breaking hearts as a boy who dies from a bee sting. Home Alone 2, Lost in New York in 1992, made even more money than the first, with Macaulay reportedly earning $4.5 million plus a percentage of the gross. By 1994, Macaulay Culkin was earning $8 million per film. He was the first child actor to command adult supersized money. He appeared on talk shows, magazine covers, even Saturday Night Live. Michael Jackson became his friend and made him the star of Black or White music video. From the outside, it looked perfect, a kid living every child's dream, but inside the Culkin household, something was rotting. See, Kit Culkin wasn't just a stage dad, he was a tyrant. And as the money rolled in, Kit's behaviour became increasingly erratic and controlling. He fired agents who disagreed with him, he got into screaming matches with directors, he monitored Macaulay's every move, controlled every dollar, and treated his son less like a child and more like a commodity. Macaulay has since described his father as jealous of his success. Kit wanted the career that Macaulay had. When he couldn't have it, he would control it instead. Movie sets became tense when Kit was around. Crew members walked on eggshells. Directors grew to dread dealing with him. Meanwhile, Macaulay's parents' marriage was disintegrating. Kit and Patricia fought constantly, often about money, control, and Macaulay's career. The household that had produced America's Sweetheart was a war zone. In 1994, Macaulay made 3 films, Getting Even with Dad, The Pagemeister, and Richie Rich. All 3 underperformed. Critics started saying he was aging out of the cute kid phase, and the offers slowed down. And then Macaulay did something nobody expected. At 14 years old, he fired his father. The custody battle that followed was ferocious. Kit and Patricia fought for control of Macaulay's estimated $17 million fortune. Macaulay, caught in the middle, made a decision that would shock Hollywood. He petitioned to remove both parents as his legal guardians. In 1995, at 15 years old, Macaulay Culkin essentially divorced his parents. He didn't take full emancipation in the legal sense, but he took control of the money and his career. His father was completely cut out. The man who had engineered his son's rise to stardom was now persona non grata. Kit Culkin would later give bitter interviews claiming Macaulay had been brainwashed, that he was ungrateful, but people who worked with him knew the truth. Kit was a nightmare, and Macaulay had finally escaped. But freedom comes with a price. After firing his father and stepping away from acting, Macaulay essentially disappeared. He was 16 years old, fabulously wealthy, and yet traumatized by years of exploitation and suddenly adrift. He enrolled in a private school in Manhattan. He tried to live a normal teenage life, but how could he? He was the most famous child in the world. Other kids would often treat him like a zoo exhibit. Teachers didn't know how to handle him, and he eventually dropped out. In 1998, at 17 years old, he married actress Rachel Miner. They were both teenagers trying to play house, and it fell apart quickly. They separated in 2000 and divorced in 2002. Macaulay drifted through his late teens and early 20s doing small projects, mostly just existing. He appeared in Party Monster in 2003, playing Club Kid in a disturbing, committed performance that showed real dynamic range, but nobody cared. The movie barely got released. And then the tabloids turned on him. Between 2004 and 2012, Macaulay Culkin had become tabloid roadkill. Paparazzi photos showed him looking thin, pale, with stringy hair, dark circles under his eyes, and the headlines that screamed, "Macaulay Culkin dying, Home Alone star on heroin, 6 months left to live." The National Enquirer, TMZ, and countless others ran years-long death watches. Every photo was analysed for signs of drug use. Every public appearance was treated as it was his potentially last. In 2004, he was arrested in Oklahoma City for possession of marijuana and prescription pills. The mugshot, of course, went viral. The kid from Home Alone was now a punchline. The rumours spiralled out of control. He was addicted to heroin. He was addicted to OxyContin. He was homeless. He'd blown through all his money. He was dying of AIDS. None of them, of course, were true. Years later, Macaulay would address it all with his characteristic dry humour. He said, "I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I'm doing okay." But during those years, he retreated further from public life. He dated actress Mila Kunis for 8 from 2002 to 2010, mostly staying out of the spotlight. He played in a pizza-themed Velvet Underground cover band called the Pizza Underground, which was either a brilliant performance art or a weird cry for help, depending on who you would ask. The world had decided Macaulay Culkin was a tragedy, a cautionary tale about child stardom, another name on the list of destroyed kids actors, along with Judy Garland and Drew Barrymore. But the world was wrong. Here's what was actually happening. Macaulay Culkin was healing. He wasn't dying. He was learning how to become a human. After a childhood spent performing for his abusive father and world's cameras, he was finally, for the first time, living on his own terms. He was skinny because he'd always naturally been thin. He looked rough in paparazzi photos because that's what the paparazzi do. The prescription pills in Oklahoma, Xanax, sleeping pills from his psychiatrist for anxiety and insomnia. Not exactly the heroin nightmare the tabloids had sold. Was he struggling? Absolutely. He admitted going through dark periods, wrestling with the trauma of his childhood, figuring out who he was beyond the kid from Home Alone. But he was surviving, and slowly and quietly, he was building a life. Around 2013, something shifted. Macaulay appeared in public more, doing more interviews and gradually re-engaging with the world, but on his own terms. And here's the thing, he wasn't even trying to resurrect an acting career. He wasn't begging for another Home Alone. He was doing something much more interesting. He launched a satirical pop culture website called Bunny Ears in 2018, featuring an abstract humour and self-awareness content. He guest starred on shows and appeared in music videos. He started doing interviews where he was funny, self-depreciating, and disarmingly honest about his past. He parodied his Home Alone image in a Google Assistant commercial in 2018 that went viral, recreating the iconic scenes as an adult. It was brilliant, self-aware, and showed that he'd finally made peace with his past. In 2019, he started a podcast called Bunny Ears, where he and his friends discussed pop culture, often with a surreal twist. And then came an American Horror Story. In 2021, Macaulay appeared in American Horror Story, double feature, playing a character reminiscent of himself, a writer dealing with success and its consequences. It was meaty, dark, and showed that he could still act when he wanted to. Critics praised the performance, and suddenly the narrative changed. He wasn't a washed-up child star anymore. He was an adult making choices. The most significant change in Macaulay's life wasn't professional, it was personal. In 2017, he started dating actress Brenda Song, known for her work on Sweet Life of Zack and Cody and other Disney projects. Song understood the pressure of child stardom. They kept their relationship relatively private. In April 2021, they welcomed a son, Dakota Song Culkin, named after Macaulay's sister, Dakota, who died in 2008 after being struck by a car. Becoming a father transformed Macaulay. In interviews, he talks about breaking the cycle of his own childhood and being present, being kind, being the parent that Kit never was. Today, at 44 years old, Macaulay lives a relatively quiet life in Los Angeles with Brenda and their 2 children. They recently welcomed a second child in 2022. He takes acting roles when they interest him. He does projects that amuse him. He stays off social media mostly, except the occasional sarcastic posts. He reconciled with most of his siblings, particularly Kieran Culkin, who became a star in his own right with Succession, but he never reconciled with his father, and he's been very clear he never will. In 2023, he received the star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Kieran spoke at the ceremony ceremony, as did Catherine O'Hara, his Home Alone mum. It was a moment of recognition, but more importantly, a moment of acceptance. So what actually happened to Macaulay Culkin? The tabloids wanted you to believe he was destroyed by fame, drugs, and tragedy, and that he was just another child star cautionary tale, broken by the industry and his own demons. But that's not what happened. What happened is that a kid who'd been exploited, controlled, commodified his entire childhood finally said enough. He walked away from the fame machine. He rejected the Hollywood system that wanted to chew him up and spit him out. He endured years of mockery, invasion of privacy, and death rumors, and yet he survived. Macaulay Culkin didn't fail. He refused to play the game. He stepped away from acting not because he couldn't do it anymore, because he didn't need to prove anything to anyone. He spent his 20s and 30s healing from childhood trauma that would have destroyed most humans. He built real relationships, he found love, he became a father, and he learned to become Macaulay Culkin and not Kevin McAllister. The media wanted a tragedy. They got a man who refused to give. Macaulay's story isn't about the dangers of child stardom, although these are real. It's about autonomy. It's about recognition when success is positioning you to have the courage to walk away. It's about healing taking as long as it takes. He could have kept making movies through his teens, probably would have stayed famous. He definitely would have made more money, but he would have remained under his father's control, puppet dancing for the industry that didn't care about his well-being. Instead, he chose himself. Today, Macaulay seems genuinely happy in a way that childhood stars rarely achieve. He's not bitter, he's not broken, he's not trying to recapture his past glories. He's just a dad who happens to have been in some of the most successful movies ever made. And when asked about potentially doing Home Alone again, he said he's open to it if the script is right, but he's not desperate for it. He doesn't need it, and that is the point. So the next time you see those tabloid photos from the 2000s, the one with the headlines screaming about his imminent death, remember they were wrong. The next time someone brings up Macaulay Culkin as an example of a destroyed child star, correct them. He wasn't destroyed. He rebuilt himself on his own terms, away from the cameras, away from the vultures, and away from the machine. Macaulay Culkin disappeared because he needed to, and he came back because he wanted to. It's not a tragedy, it's a triumph. If you enjoyed this deep dive into what really happened to Macaulay Culkin, then please do hit the subscribe button, because next time we're covering another icon who vanished from the spotlight, and the truth is even stranger than you think. Thank you so much for watching.